Hello everybody and welcome. I'm Matt, Senior Client Success Manager for White House Custom Color, and before we start chatting with Lindsay today, I've just got a few announcements and reminders for you. If you haven't hit the subscribe button for our WHCC YouTube, make sure and do that so you get notified of cool things like this that we're going to do today. Follow along on Instagram at WHCC Pro, and for all of your product details and ordering information, go to WHCC.com. And while we are chatting with Lindsay today, she is a wealth of information. I'm sure you're going to have questions. If you do along the way, put them into the chat and we will answer them real time. If you're watching this on the recording, go ahead and put the questions in the comments. We know where Lindsay's at, and I'm sure that she would be more than happy to answer any questions you have after the fact. So, Lindsay Walden, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you're Dallas, Texas area, flew in yesterday, very early, did a program for the Twin City Professional Photographers last night. Now you're here today. We're working you.
Yeah, it was fun. Shout out to everybody that was there last night. They were a great group. We had a lot of fun.
That's awesome. So for everybody that's joining us today, will you give a little introduction about yourself? Tell us a little bit about the genre of photography that you do, history, like that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So I've had a portrait studio for about 15 years now. Okay. I have always had a love for photography. My mom had a studio in our home growing up. It was more of a hobby back then, but I remember being in our laundry room and watching the process in the dark room of seeing those images
develop. Dark room / laundry room?
Yes. So I loved photography ever since I was a child. My parents' home still has all those photos of us up on the wall, and I feel like that was really important in shaping who I am today. So I really started my business around 15 years ago when I had my last child, and it was around the same time that newborn photography was invented, where it became a genre that people were really interested in. And that was something that I was really interested in. I felt like that would be something I'd be passionate about. So I really started as a photographer who was willing to photograph anything, but my passion was newborns. Okay. And eventually, over a couple of years of building that business, I was able to really niche down to focusing on newborn photography. I do maternity photography, typically in studio, and then I also offer underwater photography, most of which is going to be my maternity clients.
That's awesome.
I'll do some milestone sessions and family sessions, and as my clients are growing up, I'm doing some senior sessions. Makes me feel really old. Figure I'll probably start having to photograph some weddings now because I just love watching my clients and their families grow. It's been really fun.
That's awesome. And you're developing that relationship with them
Absolutely.
for their whole life instead of just once at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, fantastic. So like we were chatting with a little bit before we got on the live here, like I love talking about luxury brands and studying luxury brands and understanding or trying to understand how the marketing, pricing, attraction, psychology of all that goes, and that is your specialty, and that's what we're going to chat about today. So in your own words, can you define the luxury brand of your studio? I'm interested to hear your words on that.
Sure. So being a luxury brand, there's a lot of things that make a company or a brand luxury. And really I'd say probably two of the most important things are going to be your price. Like you cannot be a luxury brand and be low priced. It just doesn't make any sense. People are going to think something's wrong there.
Right, there'll be a disconnect.
Exactly. So your price has to be reflective of being luxury. Also, you can't do all the things that a luxury brand is going to offer if you're not priced appropriately. So that's really important. And then the level of service that you offer. Even when I wasn't priced high, it was really important to me that my clients had an amazing experience.
Right.
I was bending over backwards for those clients. And I continue to do that for my clients now. I just have a really great system of creating an experience that helps to solve problems. I want to find any potential pain points that a client has, anything that's going to be hard for them, either before the shoot, during the shoot, after the shoot, and solve that problem so that it's just an easy, seamless, fun experience for them.
Awesome. Can you give us some examples of what maybe some of those pain points may be that you've solved along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have, most of my clients are going to be women who are pregnant. And if you've ever been pregnant as a woman.
I have not.
No, what? You should try it sometime. It's awful. It's like this mix of like a lot of excitement. It can be really beautiful and like awful at the same time.
That's a great quote. It can be beautiful and
awful
at the same time.
It's funny because when I'm talking to a new potential client, I'll always congratulate them, because as a parent myself, it really is an amazing thing to become a parent. And it's terrifying all at the same time. It's just a mix of all these big emotions. So during that experience for them, I'm looking at things that I know in my experience as a mom, like what are things that are going to be hard for me? And not every woman loves the way they look while they're pregnant. They might be very self-conscious about it. There may be things they don't want to remember about that pregnancy. But they will always want to remember the feeling they have, that love that they have for this little person that's growing inside of them that they haven't even met yet. But they feel that love when they start feeling, really once you find out that you're pregnant, you already start that relationship. Right. That's what I want to capture, is the feeling of that relationship. And so I'm, throughout their experience, trying to emphasize that and minimize the things that are going to be painful. So, for example, finding something that's going to fit when you're pregnant and that's going to be really flattering and look amazing in photos. I take care of that. So we offer wardrobe for our clients. Okay. We have an amazing hair and makeup artist that's going to make sure that they look and feel their best. Okay. And really, like, a lot of women can do their makeup on their own, but having someone else do it for you just makes things easier. Yeah. I play this game in my studio where I try to think of anything that a potential client might forget to bring for their session. So we have everything at the studio that you can potentially not bring to your session. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I've had where a client showed up without was their baby for a newborn session. Poor mom was really tired. So I can't provide the baby, right. But pretty much everything else. We have all the things
fresh
ready.
Out of those today.
Oh, poor mama. That was kind of shocking, but it was okay. Baby was safe. She just left home and forgot to bring her baby to her newborn session. So really I try to make sure that the studio is stocked with all the things that a client might potentially need during the session. We always do a phone consultation with every client. That really helps them to connect with me before even booking with me. And then we do an in-person consultation before the session. Okay. During that, we talk about everything they need to know about the session, what to expect, how to prepare. The goal of that really is to make sure that they have all the information they need so they're not anxious or nervous.
Got it.
We just want the session to be a lot of fun for them. We'll address potential pain points, really figure out what it is that they're concerned about, and find ways to alleviate that during that design consultation. Also, meeting me in person helps so that they're not nervous and just meeting me the first day. We right. have a rapport at that point when they come in for their session. We'll talk about the design for their session. I love their input. A lot of people ask me where I get my inspiration, and it's often from my clients, who they are, their personalities. I have an aesthetic that I stay true to. Yeah, definitely. But they definitely inspire a lot of the look of the session. That's awesome. So it's very collaborative.
Cool. So a couple questions I have about what you just said there. Mm-hmm. So do you have a design closet that you keep things at the studio, or are you going out and finding like online and recommending them buy these things to bring in?
Maybe both. I have over 200 gowns for them to choose from, different okay. looks. So a lot of clients will come in and just use what I have, and there's plenty of options. I will also sometimes, if they have an interest, they have a particular look that they're trying to create, I'll go out and buy something specific for that session, because I'll probably use it again. Sometimes they'll have things that they want to bring from home, and I think that's great. But I want to take care of them. So if they don't want to have to worry about that, we've got it covered.
Yeah, for sure. So you hit on, right away when we were talking about a luxury elevated brand and business, pricing was the first thing you talked mm-hmm. about. And we're going to dig into that a little bit more, but pricing, your mannerism, your experience in mm-hmm. doing this, the brick and mortar studio, being prepared, multiple meetings prior to the session. So this is really an investment far beyond the financial piece of it. It is an investment of time on your yes. part, on their part. So from beginning to end, like from the first time that somebody would reach out to you, through the whole process, how many weeks are we talking about, or months that go into this?
Yeah, well, it depends a little bit on when they inquire. Sometimes people are inquiring. I've had people inquire about their maternity and newborn sessions, they just found out they were pregnant. And she's like, I haven't even told my husband.
Oh, wow.
But they're so excited. They've been following me for a while, and we really want to book with you. And we weren't sure how far in advance that we needed to book. I'm like, okay, 9 months. We got plenty of time. We're going to get you on the schedule for sure. Maybe go home and talk to your husband. Let him know that you're expecting. That's really exciting.
That has to make you feel pretty darn special.
I love it.
Yeah.
I have clients who have been following me for years. I've had them tell me like they knew when they saw the photography, like they couldn't wait to have a kid. I'm like, there's other reasons to have children than just the pictures. But I love that. I love that it inspires them. It's something that they're connected to.
Yeah.
So that's really fun.
Absolutely. So the time piece, the investment, your expertise, and then the finished product piece of it too. And I know that you are a believer of finished products.
Absolutely.
So how does that become the icing on the cake or the cherry on top, at the end, where you have this amazing experience, the session, the lead up, the sales appointment, and then they have this beautiful product. Like what are some of the things that you love to offer to your clients?
Albums are my favorite.
Okay.
And they can tell. I offer several different options, but I think my love for albums is shown in what I end up selling the most.
Yeah.
And I just think they're great for the genres that I photograph.
Yes.
I will talk to them and share stories about, I love this story where my oldest son was just fresh as a teenager, and he pulled out a photo album that I had from when I was pregnant with him and when he was a baby. And these weren't professional photos. It was back in the age of scrapbooking. So it was one of those kind of albums. And there was one picture of me pregnant, and he asked me when he saw that picture, what was it like when you were pregnant with me? And to be able to express to my teenage son, I loved you from the moment I knew you were mine. Like, that was a really meaningful conversation that we had for this kid who's in a kind of troublesome time period in his life. It's hard being a teenage
boys in troublesome? What?
Right. No, I have a teenage daughter right now. Let me tell you, I take the teenage boy over the teenage daughter any day. But to be able to have that conversation with him was really significant for him. And also, like, I think that's what photography is we put up on our walls what we love.
Right.
And I want my children to know how much I love them.
Yeah.
So that was really significant. So for my clients, I'll share experiences like that because I want them to connect with the idea of an album is more than just an opportunity to like put something on the coffee table to like brag to people about. This is showing our children how important they are to us. And I don't know that I would have had that conversation with my son if I hadn't had that picture printed somewhere. Having it on my phone, having it like on the cloud somewhere doesn't necessarily mean that we would have that conversation ever.
Right.
So they're really important.
That's awesome. That's a fantastic story. I'm really glad that you shared that. That's very, very powerful.
Yeah.
So to go back to the psychology of a luxury brand. So I live not too far from here, and there's a mall in our area where there's a Louis Vuitton store. And every time you go by Louis Vuitton, doesn't matter if it's Monday, Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, doesn't matter, there is a stanchion and there's a line waiting to get in. The psychology of not being available to everybody.
Right.
Price, experience. I want to dig into that a little bit with you today. So I just pulled off a few quotes from online, and I'm just going to read a couple and kind of get your reactions to them. So, dimension of elegance, practicality, luxuriousness, if that's actually a word, desirability, stylishness, and high quality. So do you feel that all of those apply to your brand and how you present yourself to clients?
Yeah, I would hope so.
Yeah.
I think that having a brand that, a lot of people will say, but I'm not like a luxury brand person. A lot of my students will be concerned, but like, what if I don't dress fancy and I don't have a nice car and I don't wear brand name labels? Neither do I. I mean, I honestly think Target's kind of bougie. I would rather.
It can be.
Yeah, this is true.
It's actually pronounced Target.
Oh, pardon me.
Yes, that's more bougie.
Exactly. I would rather have 10 Target purses. Actually, it would take a lot more than 10 Target purses. I'd rather have 10 Target purses and go on vacation than have a Louis Vuitton purse.
Yeah.
It's just not something that I value or that's a priority for me. And I'm not saying that it's bad to value that, because I spend my money on things that are important and are valuable to me.
Yep.
And everybody's different in what's important to them.
Right.
So I'd say being a luxury brand, and my clients value what I offer. Not just the art, because there are a lot of amazing newborn photographers and maternity photographers out there, but the experience that I provide. That pampering, taking care of my clients, giving them the best experience that I can. That's really important to them. And you'll find that these brands do the same thing. They take really good care of their customers.
So it's interesting what you just said. So when you're looking at, people talk about defining your client a lot. You will hear that from the platform almost all the time. To me, that was always difficult because it's not necessarily somebody that is going to pull in a high-end expensive car or live in a $3 million home. It 100% is what you said. It's what people value. In their children, their family, their everything, and that people will save for a long time for something luxurious. And I think this next quote fits directly with what you said. People often buy luxury items because of the way the products make them feel, not because they necessarily need a specific product or service. They can be something that is not affordable to them. So when people talk about the personas, that can be tough because you could be talking to the wrong person that is maybe has the means but isn't going to invest. Have you found any of that in your?
Yes. Yeah, it's really interesting because sometimes with one client you'll have one partner who is fully on board and they get the value of it, and then the other one who is not understanding the value at all and they don't see the point, which can be difficult to help them manage it. I mean, that's not my job. It's to go to marriage counseling if you need that. But oftentimes, it's my job. It is to show them the value, and it's up to them whether or not they're going. What I find is really interesting is lots of times when I do that design consultation, and I have a couple that comes in, I can tell which one is like hesitant, kind of borderline. By the end of that, if they've booked, I've done my job. I've shown them the value. And then when they come back in for their reveal session and they're picking out what they want, the one that was hesitant is always the one that drives the bigger sale. They're like, let's get everything. Because they've gotten sold and this was an amazing experience. The images are precious and really priceless at that point to them. You talked about the emotion. I want to create an emotional connection for my clients from the very beginning, not with me necessarily, well, that's great, I want them to feel connected to me, but with the images and with that printed artwork. So talking about the album in a way that helps them to get excited about having an album that they can sit with their child who they haven't even met yet. We haven't even photographed them yet, but they already feel connected to that. That's really important. So we do a lot of that in the process of finding ways to help connect them potentially to those images.
Absolutely. And whenever they look at that album, it's not just the album, it's not just the images, it's going to take them back to that whole experience of it. And that's really good to note. I think there's a disconnect in the industry from that at times, where somebody does amazing work, but the experience doesn't equal that. It's like starting a bridge and building them 2 miles apart. They're never going to connect in the middle, and that's really important. So you use the term experiential economy minutes before we jumped on here, and that's a brilliant term, and I'm going to steal that from you and use it from here on out.
I did not invent it.
Thank you very much for that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
Where do you think that timeline has been created? Has it been since COVID? Was it before that? How has that influenced your business or the world that you live in? Because I 100% agree with you that we are in an experiential economy right now.
Absolutely. Well, to explain what that is, if people don't know, for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, we were in an agricultural economy, where that was the economy of most of the world. As the world has developed, it changed to industrial, and then more of a service-oriented economy, and now we're definitely in an experiential economy. I would say it's been since before the COVID, probably even the late 90s, where people, what it means is people are more willing to put their money towards experiences than necessarily a product, even though an experience is a product. And what I love about that is, as photographers, we have the opportunity to provide both. We are providing an experience as well as a finished product. And so if we can focus on creating an experience that's really phenomenal, that clients will want to talk about,
Right.
then we can be really successful in capitalizing on this economy that it is where we're at, and it's where we're going to be at for a long time.
Absolutely. So at that point, you don't have to ask to be referred or to be talked about. It's just the experience was so over the top amazing that people can't help but share that.
Well, and people do that because when something has this like inner remarkability, that is why things go viral. It's people are like, I want that social currency of sharing something that's so cool or so unique or such an exceptional thing that I want to share that with people that I know so that they'll think I'm cool because I shared that.
You're pretty cool.
But but what I want is for my clients to feel that way about my experience so that they will want to talk about it with other people. Over 50% of my clients that I book now are either past clients or referrals from past clients. That's a good place to be. I'd love that to be 100%. That would make my life easy.
That's fantastic. And to just give everybody an idea of, the size and scale of the hospitality / experience, market economy, we're at roughly 17 billion annually. I was watching a TED Talk the other night that I've been sharing with everybody because I was so inspired by it. And that person said that would go from 17 to 65 billion.
It's amazing.
And not to confuse hospitality with just what you think of for hospitality. Hospitality is everywhere, experience based, and the amount of money that people are willing to invest, me included, into an awesome experience. You could stay at home and cook dinner every night, but wouldn't you rather go out and have an experience? I would. So obviously I love to eat. So.
When's lunch?
Right, exactly. Look at the time. We need to get going. So let's talk about sustainable pricing. That was another thing that you brought up on our discussion. So describe that for us. What do you refer to as sustainable pricing in your business?
So it's going to vary from photographer to photographer. Some people work on location, some work in a studio. What I like to start with when I'm mentoring a student is we always start with running their cost of doing business.
Okay.
Any business needs to know what it costs them to run their business. Right. Like you have to know these numbers. They need to be accurate. They need to be a good reflection of what your goals are for your business. So like I started with a home studio. I changed my pricing to the luxury pricing while I still was in the home studio and did about a year of really great sales in a home studio. I remember the discussion with my husband where it was like, I'm ready to move into the studio. I'm making enough. I can definitely do this. I have the money saved. And he's like, well, why would we do that when you're making great money in a home studio? Well, I did it because I can provide a better experience if I don't have my dog and my cat and my 3 kids running around. And it was really stressful. So moving into the studio space, I didn't even have to change my pricing because I was already priced based on my goals by doing my cost of doing business.
Okay.
I did eventually raise them, obviously. Like we're going to be making changes to our pricing. It's always organic.
Yep.
But it's possible to be in a home studio or to be on location and charging that luxury price because you're giving them an amazing experience.
Right.
And that will allow you to achieve those goals quicker. So by running our cost of doing business, making sure that we're paying ourselves a fair wage, which I think as creatives is really important.
Be really tough.
Yeah. We can be we have a lot of money blocks. So it really helps, I think, to have a mentor, someone who's going to kind of push you, to challenge you on those. And to make sure that you're not making business decisions based on emotion, that they really need to be reflective of your numbers and what your goals are.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? A little bit louder for the people in the back.
People in the back.
Do not make decisions based on emotion.
Yeah.
It has to be data driven. I am very lucky here at White House to be surrounded by very, very, very intelligent people, and decisions are made here based on fact and data and research, instead of, I think we should do this. And I can't count the number of times that I'll be talking to photographers around the country and, I'll ask about what their most popular products are and they'll say, well, these 3 things, and they have 12 on their price, their product guide. Like, what about these?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't sold one of those in 5 years. Well, what in the heck?
Why
are they
is it
still
there?
on there?
Right?
Let's move on. Oh, but I really like that.
Yeah. We get emotionally attached to things,
Yes.
but you really have to look at your market. And there's been times where the market has told me, based on what I was selling, it's okay to raise your prices. If everyone buys your top collection, then it's too low.
Yeah.
I will say that when I first raised my pricing to the luxury level, it was really scary.
Yeah.
And if you are not priced at a point where it's scary, where you want to throw up in your mouth a little bit every time you say your pricing out loud, then you're probably too low for the luxury market. I got a lot of feedback when I was making that change that wasn't positive. My dad, who's a successful businessman, he's retired now, but I called and told him, and he said, Lindsay, no one's going to pay that much for just pictures, which was really hard to hear. But he didn't value photography at a high level. Why would he? His wife was a photographer and she would do it for free. So he never had to pay for it. But when I had those first sales, I would call him every time, just crying. I was so excited that I could turn this passion of mine into a successful business. I eventually, like once I'd hit my top sale, I stopped calling because I didn't want to be boastful, but he called and was like, is everything okay with your business? Just checking in. And I was like, I didn't want to like keep rubbing it in. But it was so exciting because he, over time, was like, oh yeah, I think you need to raise your prices again. He fully got on board when he could understand that there is a market for photography in the luxury side.
Right, that's awesome. So another piece of that too, and as you're watching along today in the conversation that we're having, you are there. You have achieved a level that you are happy with. There's always room to grow, but you have a lot of success. You've got history. When you're starting to change over pricing to luxury, all the things like that, one of the most difficult things can be closing the sale. That I've talked to people about, and having that that stamina, that being solid enough to say, okay, this is your invoice total is 11,000, whatever today, and being able to say that without throwing up, in your mouth. I'm sure there were times where you had butterflies like crazy when you're giving that final total. Like, what is your advice to people watching along today, that have to go through that for the first time and are scared to death to do it?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is the luxury client, pricing is not the most important thing to them. Okay. It might be to us, and we don't want to put our emotion onto our clients. Our clients are not us.
How do you do that? I'm going to interrupt you right now because we don't want to forget that one.
Right. So I'll explain that here in a second. I just want to make a couple points. So the most important thing, I think, is having your pricing set up so it's strategic, so that your products sell themselves. Like, I'm not a salesy person at all. I'm a helper. I am there to help my client make sure that they get everything that they could possibly need and want. And sometimes that means, as I'm going through, I'm saying, okay, well, what about gifts for grandparents? And while are in these different locations and, picking out all the images and things that they love. And I'm sitting there looking as I'm totaling up their pricing, because we don't talk about pricing during the sales session unless they ask. Because again, it's not the most important thing to the luxury client. They just want what they want. And if that total is getting high, I have a threshold where even at this point, I'm like, if I get over 15 grand, I'm a little like, oh, what's happening? What are you doing, sir? And I even had a client once where I totaled his total. It was just over 15,000, and I gave him his total, and he said, Lindsay, I'm not done. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Never mind.
That was where I forgot. I stopped being helpful. So if I'm just being helpful and making sure that they're getting everything that they want, and keep that focus as a helper, I'm not focused on the price either. Then when I do turn my clipboard around and show them, okay, this is what you're getting, I go through, I don't even talk about the price. It's there, they can see it, but we're not talking about the price because it's not what matters. I'm giving them everything that they want. Once I say, okay, these are all the things we're getting, here's your total. I don't even say it out loud, I just point to it because I don't want to say it out loud. It's a game of chicken. Whoever talks first loses. So I do not want to be the first person to talk.
Right.
And one of probably three things happens at a sales session at that point. They say, great, cash, credit, or card. Like, hand me over their platinum card. I'm like, awesome. And we're just so happy. They're thrilled. They're not making this purchase and regretting it. They're so happy with what they got. Another thing that might happen is there's a long pause. And that's really hard to not vomit out a discount. Like, oh, but I can give you a better deal than that.
Exactly.
Like, You don't know what they're thinking. It could just be that they're literally like looking through and making sure my math is correct, because my math is not always correct. I'm an artist, I have skills, and math is not one of them. So I just wait and let them take it in. Sometimes if it's a couple, they're like looking at each other, and I'll ask, do you guys need a minute? And I'll step out if I need to. I take my phone with me and like doom scroll Facebook, so I'm not overthinking like what's gonna happen. When I come back, usually they're like, okay, great. They just needed to check in and make sure this is a big purchase. We want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm not going to go home and get yelled at.
Yes.
Sometimes they'll say, you know, that is more than we'd planned on spending. We're not sure that we can cover that. And then I'm just helper mode again. Okay, great. What are our priorities? What do we need to scale back on? We might start taking some things out. Honestly, oftentimes we'll start kind of trying to narrow things down a little bit, and they'll be like, you know what, never mind. Let's just do it.
Right.
So that's probably the majority of the time is the first, where they just pause for a moment and then they hand me their credit card.
Fantastic. And also, I want people following along here to understand, like, you're prepared for all three of those scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're fine with saying, you know, do you need a minute?
Yeah.
You know, and having the confidence to leave the room and let them have that conversation, not pressure, but that can be hard if you've never done that before and you're in that awkward moment, because that is the first thing that comes out. Well, I can do this for you.
Yeah. The other thing that sometimes happens, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, is I have a lot of clients who will ask for a discount. And sometimes it's cultural. It's just that's something that they were brought up to do. They will always, always ask for a discount. It doesn't offend me. It's totally fine. So I usually will, this is where being the business owner, like I get to do whatever I want. I know what my cost of doing business is and what I need to be averaging. I know if this is a great client, they're going to be giving me lots of referrals. I want to take good care of them. I don't do discounts though. I add value. So one of my favorite things to do is say, you know, you are so close to reaching the $7,000 mark. Once you spend that amount, I'll give you a $500 artwork credit that you can use towards anything. So it's an incentive for them to maybe spend a little bit more. An artwork credit does not cost me $500.
Right.
And they can use it for anything, including digital images. But they feel good, like, I got a good deal. That's my favorite thing, is a client spending $8,000 and saying, that was a good deal.
And give you a hug on the way out.
Absolutely, they always do, every time.
Yeah.
And my other favorite thing is when I'm talking about pricing with them, they'll say, that sounds reasonable. And if they knew how triggering for photographers it was to hear the word reasonable, because we hear that in a lot of groups, like looking for a reasonable photographer, it's totally reasonable to them. The experience, the images that they feel very connected with, and the beautiful finished artwork is all reasonable to them for them to be spending them on.
And it all fits together. It aligns, which is perfect. So earlier in the conversation, you were talking about you're not necessarily a person who wears luxury brands or has a luxury purse, you know, things like that that you think of. Let's talk about what a money block is. You mentioned that term earlier. I had it on our list. Let's talk about that. Tell us what your opinion of a money block is.
Yeah, so a lot of us, I would say most of us, have some kind of emotional feelings when it comes to money. And a lot of this probably stems from our childhood and experiences that we've had. I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist. I don't have any kind of training in that, but I've mentored enough photographers to see this trend of attaching emotion to selling something that we create that is an emotional process as artists, and having to attach a number to that is really hard for us. I think because maybe we don't value photography at this level that we're needing to price at in order to meet our business goals, it's really a struggle. And so I'll find students who are like, well, I'm willing to work really hard and have a high volume of clients and just charge less, because I'm so uncomfortable with the thought of raising my pricing beyond that. And that can be really, really hard. It's
for sure.
Dealing with commodity clients versus luxury clients. They aren't very brand loyal, so brand retention is really hard. They're gonna go to somebody else because, oh, they're $100 cheaper.
Right.
Whereas if I make a $100 price increase, which I do every year, my clients don't even blink. Like I could make
it's not even noticeable.
No, I could make a $500 increase and they're like, they don't even notice.
Yeah.
Whereas the commodity level clients, they will notice small shifts in price. They will also, if you offer like mini sessions, they might not ever book a full session with you. because, well, why would they when they can get a mini session instead?
You're competing against yourself at that point.
Exactly. Commodity businesses compete on price. Luxury businesses compete on the experience, the quality, on a lot of different things. So you can really niche and be like, well, I'm going to compete by being super unique. So one of the things I offer is underwater photography, which is not, there's a barrier to entry into that, so there's not as much competition. And that uniqueness is a competitive advantage for me. Being higher priced can be a competitive advantage. I had probably one of my first clients, the very first month after I'd made the switch from literally overnight, going from charging $250 and they got a CD, this is a while ago, with a beautiful like sticker that I printed on it. Yes, it was very fancy. A CD of their full gallery of images for $250. And then overnight had a $250 booking fee and they got nothing. All that got them was on my schedule. And then collections that were starting over $1,000. That was really scary. But I remember one of my first clients, she's still a client, I just photographed their family this last year, came into my humble little home studio. We went over the pricing. She saw my top collection, which was over $3,000, said, I'll probably get that one. I was like, oh yeah, that's real popular. Yeah, you'll love that one. Like literally like
100% of the people get that.
Oh yeah, everybody loves that one. And as she was getting ready to leave, she gives me a big hug. This was at the consultation. Big hug and whispers in my ear, I knew you'd be good because you're expensive. And I almost laughed out loud because I was like, last month, I was so cheap. Wow. And I am not any better from last month to today. Now, granted, I will say that raising my pricing, I got better a lot quicker than I would have otherwise because I could afford better equipment, I could afford the training. I was not good.
And the expectation of the client, too.
Absolutely.
That pushes.
Yeah. So a lot of times I have photographers coming in, how do I know when I'm good enough? I'm like, you're there, you're fine. I'm not even gonna look at your gallery. Like, if this is important to you, if you want to take good care of your clients and give them a great experience, then you can be luxury. And your work will progress over time, probably quicker than it would have otherwise, because you can afford it.
Yeah, that's awesome. This is brilliant. I'm enjoying this so much. We are running a little bit out of time, and I definitely want to talk about your underwater photography. So we're gonna shift away from the business just a little bit here. And again, just a quick reminder: if you do have questions for Lindsay, go ahead and put them into the chat. Otherwise, if you're watching the recording, put them into the questions and the comments, and we will get that back to you. So let's talk about your underwater photography. This is something that is so cool to me. Now, this morning we actually went out into the lab and we saw one of your albums being created. So I'm going to show this to Connor here so he can zoom in on a little bit. But can you tell us where the passion for this came from, and like how did you figure this out? This is incredible.
Yeah, so I've actually been an underwater photographer a lot longer than I've been a portrait photographer. I've been photographing sharks for over 25 years. If they would be paying clients, I would just photograph sharks. It would be amazing.
A billionaire?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's just
so I'm an avid scuba diver, love underwater photography. I can't say I invented the genre. I wish I could. I remember seeing someone else who'd done some underwater maternity pictures years ago when I first got into the business and thought, oh, I could do that. I have the underwater housing. And then it's just been a process of learning, because underwater photography is very different from studio photography. We do it either in a local pool that's nice and shallow. I would say the most important thing for me as an underwater photographer is safety.
Right.
Because you're adding an element that is inherently has some risk involved.
Absolutely.
Especially because I'm working with women who are pregnant. My goal is to never have to deliver a baby in the water.
That sounds like a reasonable
Do not
goal.
want that to ever happen. So we have a lot of things in place. I have a safety swimmer. We have a list of things that we are checking in to make sure that my clients are really comfortable and safe throughout. Especially when you bring in fabrics that are long and flowy. People get wrapped up in those. We're using a pretty shallow pool. Yeah. We are keeping an eye on them 100% of the time. So I would say, don't just go out and try this and throw them in 20 feet of water in the ocean. Bad plan. So safety is super important before you get into something like this. But really, it's an area that's still exploring. Like it's a genre that it's not new really, but there's so many different things that we can do with it that we don't even know yet.
Yeah.
Using lighting underwater, using different types of backdrops, fabrics. So it's kind of one that I feel like I can pour creativity into right now, where I can create something that's still totally unique that nobody else has done.
Well, and definitely, you know, when you're looking at your images, I'm assuming that people look at your work on social media and on your website and just naturally assume that you are the subject matter expert at this because the images are just so gorgeous.
Thank you.
And that may or may not be the case, but when you're producing such amazing stuff, that would be the natural reaction for people. So like this image is on the cover here. Is that a backdrop that you drop into the water? Just explain how you do that. I'm intrigued by this.
Yeah, so I had my handy husband built me a PVC pipe backdrop stand that we can lower into the water. We use clamps to then wrap the fabric over it and just pull it really, really tight.
Okay.
And throw a person in front of it. It's actually
so cool.
not that, I would say it's not that difficult. Underwater photography is definitely more difficult and a whole different beast from shooting in studio. I can take 100 pictures in studio and have 95 of them be amazing.
Yeah.
I can take 100 pictures underwater and maybe 1 or 2 of them are amazing. There's a lot of elements. It takes a lot of coaching to your client to help them to get comfortable underwater. I always recommend they practice in a pool before, and I'll give them some tips on things that they need to do. They forget it all when they show up, but it's okay. In studio, I can go up and I can fix their hair.
Right.
I can adjust things. Underwater, it just does what it wants, which is kind of part of what I love. Because every photo is going to be unique. The hair is going to look different in one photo to the next. The gown, the fabric is going to look different. I do a lot of composites where I'm taking pieces and elements from multiple images to get that one perfect image. And then I'm also using AI because that is awesome and a handy tool that now is just getting better and better. I'm using some AI to help enhance the images.
Right. So then about how long does an underwater session take?
It varies a little bit depending on the number of gowns that they're picking. I usually will limit it to like 3 or 4. I'm also limited on the light because I am using natural light if I'm shooting outdoors, but I don't want dappled light on the pool. I'm not a fan of that look. I could put like diffusion cover over the pool and kind of like do it that way, but usually we just have about an hour and a half to 2 hours of shade over the pool in the evenings that we'll use. And because I'm working with pregnant women, I don't want to overtire them. So if I can tell, okay, she seems like she's starting to get really, really tired, I'll just call it. Say, I think we've gotten enough. But it is trickier because I'm looking at the back of my camera. I have a mask on, like a snorkeling mask, looking at the back of my camera that's in a housing, and then you got that little in studio. I know when I have the shot. Underwater, I'm like, I think that was good, but let's do it 3 more times just to be sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they might have like hair in front of their face that I didn't notice, or they're like squinching their face. It's really hard to control your facial expressions underwater. So.
Yeah, I look at that, I'm like, I would have water up my nose.
Yeah, they do. I'll say that it's not very glamorous. There's a lot of snot. We keep little towels, and my assistant's there to be like, here you go, just dab. Don't wipe your face because you don't want. We do like a lot of waterproof makeup. We have an amazing hair and makeup artist that gets our clients ready. But yeah, you have to be really careful, and they get a lot of water up their noses. It's kind of awful, honestly. But
that goes back to the beautiful and awful.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But they've seen the images as examples in my studio, and I say this. I warn them. This is not easy. I have people who inquire with me for underwater that I talk them out of it sometimes. Where I'm very upfront. This is not an easy session. In studio, super fun. Like you might be a little sore because I'm making you pop your leg a few times. You might be a little sore the next day. Underwater, you're going to be exhausted at the end of, and most of them are like, I'm hungry. We actually keep snacks near the pool and stuff, but they're just hungry and tired, and it's a lot. But it's so, for many of them, it's totally worth it because the images are absolutely unique and very ethereal and different.
And that's an investment into the finished product for them too, to be willing to go through that.
Oh, for sure.
That work.
Yeah, and it's part of that, like making that connection for them. we want them emotionally connected to the process and to the images. And because they put in all this work collaboratively with me, they're invested.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned earlier that your students and you're helping people in the industry. If somebody's interested in finding out more about what you do and your resources and social media, like where can they find you online?
Yeah, if they just go to my website, lindsaywaldenphotography.com, I have a section for students. They also can just email me. Honestly, I work with my students the same way I do with my clients. We're going to get on the phone first. I want to get to know you. I want to make sure that I'm a good fit for you. And I customize my mentoring to them. I do sometimes offer workshops. I will say, as a mentor, it's really important to me that I am still very active, involved in the industry. 95% of my income is as a photographer. And I feel, especially as a business photographer or a business mentor, that I need to be very authentic about that, that I am still making my income as a photographer. So I take a limited number of students, and I'll do occasional workshops.
That's awesome. Well, I literally could sit here and talk to you for like 3 hours. This is fantastic. One thing I did want to show just real quick for everybody that's following along, there's a lot of people that aren't aware that we can do custom debossing on albums. And I just want to show everybody, this is just cool. This is a sample that the team made for you this morning of your actual logo.
I'm obsessed.
Yes.
Like, I can't believe I haven't been doing this on all my albums.
Yeah, debossed into one of your most popular cover options. And it's all the different colors, the blind debossed, black, white, gold, silver, and rose gold. But just the close-up of that is just really fun to see. So just a side little note, if you haven't done a custom deboss of your logo, this is a great thing to do.
I love it.
And to customize that for that high-end luxury look, it fits perfectly with the brand.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure and throw that out there. Thank you. This has been fantastic.
It's been fun.
For you to come in and teach for 4 hours last night and come in here today and still be smiling and have all the information to share, this has been incredible, and I really appreciate it. And we appreciate you taking the time to be here. So,
thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So just a couple of quick announcements here before we let you go. If you haven't hit the subscribe button on the WHCC YouTube, make sure and do that because you don't want to miss stuff like this. This is fantastic. Follow along on Instagram at WHCC Pro, and for all of your product questions and details, hit up WHCC.com. Thank you for joining us today. We'll see you next time.